I open the game with the move pawn to e4, pawn to d6, knight to c3, pawn to e5, bishop to c4. I do want to move my pawn to d3, but I first want to get my bishop developed, so it is an attacking piece instead of being stuck behind my own pieces. Bishop to e7. Probably better is knight to f6, following the rule of developing the knights before the bishops. Because of this bishop to e7 move, I'm able to do what looks to be a beginner-like move, queen to h5, converging on the f7 point. Pawn to g6 is the best defense, seeing that knight to h6 is met with simply pawn to d3. The knight is now attacked and there's big trouble for black. Pawn to g6 is the best response. Queen to d1 was my next move. And the reason I didn't keep my queen developed and play maybe to e2 was because I didn't want to have to worry about the knight coming to c6 and then d4 where it would be attacking my queen and pawn. I didn't want to have to worry about that, so I just came all the way back. Now, I recognize that I wasted a move. I came to h5 and then came back to d1. What do I have in return? Well, this is exactly what I have. Black now has dark square weaknesses. Because of this, his dark square bishop becomes that much more important for him to hang on to. As you'll see in the game, whenever this dark square bishop that black has is attacked, he usually does something about it. He doesn't want me to get his bishop, and I in turn do want to get that bishop, either by trading it for my dark square bishop or either of my knights. Knight to f6, development, pawn to d3, castle, knight to f3, development, pawn to c6, preparing a pawn to d5 move where it would be attacking my bishop. Bishop to b3, so once black comes here it won't be attacking my bishop. King to g7, preventing my bishop from coming to h6. Castle, knight b to d7, queen to d2. I'm trying to get a piece to this weakened dark square. Knight to g8, defending h6, and I think it's important for black to do that because, for example, if knight to c5, maybe there's some trouble in queen to h6 check, king here, followed by knight here, and there's some pressure against h7, and since there's pressure against h7, this f6 knight is tied down to defending h7. This could be a problem for black. So black simply avoids it altogether and plays knight to g8 and lets the knight guard h6. Pawn to d4, I see that the black king is on this diagonal, so I'm trying to maybe exchange these two pawns off, so that maybe the black king is more susceptible to being attacked. Bishop to f6, logical. Knight to e2. Now the reason I chose this move is because for as long as this pawn remains here, my knight really can't do anything, so it's time to reposition. Knight to e2, pawn captures pawn, knight on f captures the pawn, so that when my e4 pawn is attacked, I can defend it, and that happens on my next move. Knight to c5 attacks the pawn and the bishop, and now I defend my pawn like this with knight to g3. Knight captures bishop. I have three different pieces that can capture this knight on b3. I want to keep my knight on d4 centralized, it's fine where it is, and protected with my queen. And of these two pawns, I follow the rule of capturing towards the center unless there is good reason not to, and there is simply no good reason not to capture towards the center. And plus my rook now has stuff to do maybe against this a7 pawn at some point. Pawn to d5, I could capture the pawn, but I don't want to help black out. I don't want to help develop his queen. Instead, I get my rook in play. Rook to d1, seeing that if my pawn is captured, I recapture with my knight, and I'm attacking this bishop. Once again, this dark square bishop is something that I want. So rook to d1, rook to e8, pressuring my pawn for what is now a second time, and this position right here I thought about for some time, and I came up with the move pawn to f3. And the reason I thought about this move for some time is because whenever you move a pawn in front of your king, you're either making a weakness and or opening your king to a diagonal, and I have an open diagonal straight to my king. I had to ask myself, well, what if black plays queen to b6, pinning my knight to the king? Is there a convenient way for me to get out of this pin? And there is, in the form of queen to f2, breaking the pin and getting ready to complete my development with a bishop move to potentially e3. So, after pawn to f3, pawn captures pawn, knight captures pawn, I'm hitting that bishop. I want this dark square bishop. He avoids this exchange. Bishop to e5, hitting h2. I'm defending h2, so we have one attacker, one defender. Let's start to train our eye to view h2 as an unprotected piece. It's attacked once, defended once, let's call it unprotected. He's getting ready to play the queen to h4 and attack it again. And I want to be able to develop my c1 bishop. So I want to prevent black from coming to h4, and I can do just that. And now I make way for my bishop to come out in this direction. Queen to e7, bishop to g5 attacking the queen, pawn to f6, and because the pawn is here, the knight can't develop here. Bishop to d2, retreat, but not just retreat to any square. I retreat to here so I can come here next, where I can eventually maybe trade off bishops. Pawn to f5 attacking my knight. Knight to c5, is this a blunder? Well, no it's not, because my knight is protected indirectly by my queen. Seeing that if it is taken, my knight could come to here or here, where it would be checking the black queen, or excuse me, checking the black king, and then I would get the queen on c5. So knight to c5, king to f7, now this is a threat, and only now do I move it to d3, where I'm attacking the bishop. Bishop gets out of the way. Rook to e1, attacking the queen. Queen to d8, rook captures rook, king captures rook, and black is converging on my knight, so I have to do something about it. Bishop to c3, I'm getting ready to potentially exchange bishops off. King to f7, and now this seems very logical, but I want to be able to attack this point before I move my rook off of the a file. So, knight to e2, two different things going on here. I'm getting ready to exchange the bishops, and I'm getting ready to capture the a7 pawn. Pawn to a6, saves the pawn, and now rook to e1. These are the best positions for these bishops to be on. Neither side does well to get off of this diagonal. And at the same time, I could capture, but at the same time, I don't want to help black develop this knight on g8. Knight to e7, and now I'm able to trade off this dark square bishop that I've been wanting, and black is lost at this point actually. Queen to h4, checks the king, hits this point. King to g7, the only move to defend the pawn. Knight e to f4, hitting the knight for what is now a second time, and the knight is actually pinned to the queen. Queen to b6, check. I could go here, but I didn't want to have to worry about maybe back rank mate. So, king to f1 to avoid the back rank mate potentially at some point. Knight to g8, rook to e7. Is this a blunder? Well, actually it's not, because knight captures rook is forced, otherwise I get this pawn on my next move. So after knight captures rook, queen captures knight. If the king goes here, it's checkmate in 4. Actually, there's two different checkmate in 4s, and this is what it looks like. Check, 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 mate, or mate. So king here is no good. King here is no good either because of checkmate. So black is down to this being the best move, and now knight to e5. And it is not by chance that my pieces are finding comfort on these dark squares. Black does not have a dark square bishop, and because of that my pieces can find nice homes on them. Queen to b5, checking my king. I simply block with pawn to c4, attacking the queen. Queen captures knight. This is the best that black can do. Queen captures queen, and now it's just a matter of winning the game. Threatening mate on g7. For as long as my queen remains here, the rook can't come to the d or e file. I'm just looking for a mating net. I don't want to open up the queen side, so I just avoid pawn exchanges. Pawn to g4, capture, capture. Pawn to a4, king to g2. Pawn captures pawn, pawn to g5 check. King to h5, king to h3, and black resigns, seeing that queen to e2 or queen captures pawn on the next move will be checkmate. So hopefully you enjoyed this game. Take care. Bye.